The Galactic Council chamber hovered above a white dwarf star, its light bleeding through the crystal walls like a silent warning. Every seat was filled. Every species that mattered was present. This was not a debate session. This was a verdict. At the center of the chamber stood the human delegation. There were fewer than before. Once, humanity had sent dozens of representatives. Now there were only 5. They wore no armor, no symbols of rank, no national flags. Just dark uniforms, plain and unadorned. They did not speak. They waited. High Counselor Verex rose from his elevated seat, his long limbs unfolding with practiced authority. His voice carried through the chamber, amplified and calm. By unanimous decision, he said, the Council has concluded that humanity represents a continuing destabilizing force within civilized space. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some species watched with curiosity, others with satisfaction. Verex continued. Repeated conflicts, escalatory military doctrines, refusal to submit to unified command structures. These patterns cannot be ignored. Behind the humans, a massive star map ignited. Core systems glowed bright gold. Trade routes shimmered like veins. And then, slowly, the map darkened toward the edges. The solution, Verex said, is exile. The word echoed. Humanity was to be stripped of all Council protections. All inter-system access revoked. Their colonies were reassigned. Their fleets were restricted to evacuation only. They were being cast out. To the outer rim, Verex concluded. Beyond mapped governance. Beyond Council responsibility. Several Council members allowed themselves thin smiles. The outer rim was not a place. It was a graveyard. A region of radiation storms, collapsed hyperlanes, pirate war bands, and dead civilizations. No major power had survived there for more than a generation. The human delegates did not protest. That silence unsettled the chamber. One of the junior observers leaned toward another and whispered, "Why aren't they begging?" A sensor officer quietly adjusted her console. She had been watching human fleet movements during the session. What she saw made her frown. Verex tilted his head slightly. Do humans wish to respond? The lead human delegate stepped forward. He was older than the others, his hair gray, his face marked by years of pressure and loss. When he spoke, his voice was steady. Not angry, not afraid. Humanity acknowledges the ruling, he said. A few council members blinked. That was not the expected answer. We will withdraw as ordered. The human continued. All remaining fleets and populations will relocate beyond council borders within the allotted time. Verex nodded. Compliance is noted. The human paused, then added one final sentence. We ask only that no council forces follow us. The chamber stirred. Verex's eyes narrowed. The council has no interest in the outer rim, he replied coolly. You will find no pursuit there. The human delegate inclined his head. Then this hearing is complete. Without another word, the humans turned and walked away. As the chamber doors sealed behind them, a low unease settled over the room. Something about the exchange felt unfinished. Days later, humanity vanished from the core. Entire star systems went dark as human colonies evacuated with surgical speed. No chaos, no riots, just precision. Fleets moved in disciplined formations, escorting civilian arcs into deep space. Council analysts expected panic. Instead, they saw coordination. More troubling were the destinations. Human fleets were not scattering randomly across the rim. They were converging. Dozens of task groups heading toward the same dead zones. Regions marked in council databases as non-viable. A logistics officer flagged the data. They're bringing fabrication ships, she said quietly. Why would refugees need shipyards? Another asked. No one answered. Weeks passed. Then months. At first, reports from the outer rim were exactly what the council expected. Pirate activity spiked. Rim warlords clashed over abandoned territory. It looked like chaos. Then the signals changed. Pirate beacons went silent. Smuggling lanes collapsed. Long-range probes detected structured energy emissions where none had existed before. A fringe trader limped back into council space with scorched hull plating and a shaken crew. When questioned, he struggled to find words. There are lights out there, he said. Cities. Stations. Not ruins. New ones. Council intelligence dismissed the report. Then another arrived. And another. A RIM listening post detected encrypted traffic using human linguistic patterns. but scaled far beyond known human fleet capacity. The analyst stared at the data. "This isn't survival traffic," she muttered. "This is coordination." A senior counselor scoffed. "Humans cannot build an empire in the rim. The environment alone." He stopped speaking as a new alert chimed. Hyperlane disruption. 3 council trade convoys lost near the rim border. No distress calls. No debris fields. Just absence. The chamber reconvened in an emergency session. Varric stood again, but this time his posture was tense. "Explain," he demanded. A tactical officer brought up the projection. "The convoys vanished near sectors recently entered by human evacuation fleets." "Are you suggesting hostility?" a council member snapped. "No weapons signatures were detected," the officer replied. "But something controlled the space. Something precise." Silence spread. A final data packet arrived, intercepted accidentally by a long-range sensor buoy. It was not addressed to the council. It was not encoded for them. It was a human internal transmission. The chamber listened as the translated message played. "Outer Rim Phase 1 complete," a calm human voice said. "Territory secured. Infrastructure is stable. Proceeding to Phase 2. The projection ended. No one spoke. The council had cast humanity out, believing exile was a sentence of death. Only now did the first terrible question form in their minds. What if exile was exactly what humans needed? And far beyond the edge of mapped space, unseen shipyards burned bright against the darkness, and humanity prepared to remind the galaxy what happens when it underestimates the ones it abandons. Beyond the council's borders, the outer rim did not welcome newcomers. It tore them apart. Radiation storms screamed across broken systems like living things. Gravity wells twisted navigation data into lies. Ancient battlefields drifted through the void, the remains of species that once believed they were strong enough to claim this place. The galaxy had not mapped the rim out of neglect. It had mapped it and then given up. Human fleets entered anyway. They did not rush. They did not scatter. They advanced slowly, methodically, as if they had already accepted loss as part of the cost. Civilian arcs stayed far back, shielded by layered escort formations. Ahead of them moved something unexpected, not warships, but survey craft. Thousands of them. They scanned everything. Asteroids, dead moons, ruin stations, wreckage fields older than human history. Where other species saw hazards, humans saw materials. Where others saw chaos, humans saw patterns. The first months were brutal. 3 human convoys vanished to radiation flares that overloaded shielding. A pirate coalition ambushed a construction group and lost 6 ships, but took 2 human cruisers with them. A drifting alien relic activated without warning and wiped out an entire sensor net. Loss reports flowed steadily. Human commands logged them, studied them, adjusted. They learned fast. They reinforced hulls with layered alloys scavenged from ancient wrecks. They modified engines to ride gravitational shear instead of fighting it. They seeded danger zones with decoys and false signatures, turning natural hazards into traps. Pirates were the first to notice something had changed. A rim warlord named Ketzer ruled 3 systems by fear alone. His fleets preyed on refugees from failed civilizations. When human signals entered his territory, he laughed. "Another species running from the core," he told his captains. "They always come here thinking they will survive." He sent 12 ships. None returned. No distress calls. No debris. Just silence. Weeks later, a single automated buoy drifted back into pirate space. It broadcast a short message on open channels, translated into dozens of rim dialects. "This territory is claimed," the message said. "Hostile entry will be answered." The voice was human. Ketzer sent a second fleet. Larger. Better armed. This time, observers saw what happened. The human ships did not charge. They did not form battle lines. They pulled back, deeper into a debris field dense enough to blind sensors. Pirate ships followed, confident in their numbers. Then the field moved. Asteroids ignited with controlled detonations. Wreckage shifted into kill corridors. Gravity anchors activated, slamming pirate vessels into each other at impossible angles. Human fire came last, precise, brief, merciless. The rim watched. Within a year, pirate attacks near human zones stopped entirely. Not because pirates were destroyed, because they learned. Human territory became known as quiet space. Ships that entered without permission vanished. Ships that respected boundaries were ignored. No ransom demands. No warnings. Just outcomes. Far from the violence, deeper in the rim, something more important was happening. Human engineers found an ancient star, unstable, violent, written off by every major civilization. Its energy output fluctuated wildly, tearing apart any attempt at permanent infrastructure. Humans built around it anyway. They anchored stations to its gravitational tides, letting the star's fury power entire industrial networks. When parts failed, they replaced them. When losses mounted, they adjusted designs. They did not abandon the project. They called it Forge 1. From Forge 1 came ships. Not beautiful ones. Not elegant. Functional. Modular. Built to be repaired under fire and reconfigured mid-mission. Human war doctrine changed with their environment. Every ship became adaptable. Every crew learned engineering as well as combat. Meanwhile, human diplomats, once ignored in the core, found a new purpose. They did not approach the Council. They approached the forgotten. Minor species trapped in rim systems. Nomads fleeing slavers. Clans crushed by pirates and ignored by the galaxy. Humans offered them something radical. Shelter. No submission rituals. No genetic hierarchies. No permanent caste roles. Just one condition. Defend the territory together. Many refused at first. Then they saw pirate fleets avoid human zones. Then they saw stable trade lanes open where none had existed. Then they saw human ships return from battle with damage, and crews still alive. Slowly, quietly, alliances formed. Back in council space, reports piled up. Outer rim instability was decreasing. That made no sense. A senior trade minister dismissed it. Chaos always settles after enough destruction. But analysts saw the numbers. Pirate raids down by 40%. Smuggling routes rerouted around specific coordinates. Black market prices spiking due to lost access. Those coordinates matched human movement patterns. A junior strategist spoke carefully. They are shaping the rim. The chamber laughed at that. Then a council listening post near the rim border went dark. Not destroyed. Disabled. When technicians reactivated it days later, its logs showed something unsettling. Human vessels had passed within weapons range. They had the opportunity to eliminate the station. They had not. Instead, they had adjusted the station's sensors, improving them. A short message had been left behind. "This space is dangerous," it read. "You should see more clearly." The message disturbed more counselors than an attack would have, because it suggested confidence. Years passed. Human presence expanded like slow pressure, not conquest. Hyperlanes were not seized. They were stabilized. Dangerous routes were not closed. They were tamed. Outer rim trade began flowing through human-controlled corridors because they were safer. The galaxy noticed when independent merchants started choosing human routes over council ones. A council economist finally said what others feared. "If this continues, they won't need to fight us," she warned. "We will become irrelevant." At the edge of the rim, a human admiral stood on a command deck overlooking Forge 1. New ships drifted into formation, their hulls still glowing from construction heat. An officer approached. "Outer territories report compliance," she said. "No hostile contacts." The admiral nodded. "And the junction?" "Mapped. Stable. Unclaimed by any major power." The admiral allowed himself a rare smile. "Prepare for the next phase," he said. Far away, in the heart of the Galactic Council, an alarm finally sounded that could not be ignored. A major hyperjunction, vital to 3 core sectors, had gone dark. No explosion. No battle. It was simply controlled. And for the first time since humanity's exile, the Council began to understand a terrifying truth. The outer rim was no longer a graveyard. It was becoming a foundation. And humanity was building something the galaxy could no longer stop. The silence around the darkened hyperjunction spread faster than any alarm. For the first time in centuries, traffic between 3 core sectors slowed to a crawl. Automated rerouting systems failed to compensate. Ships piled up at neighboring gates, crews confused and nervous. No explosion had been detected. No wreckage. No distress calls. The junction was intact. It was simply no longer responding to council authority. Emergency protocols triggered across council space. Trade lords demanded answers. Defense ministries blamed each other. And in the highest chamber, where calm had once been a performance, voices rose in open argument. "This is sabotage," one counselor snapped. Declare it an act of war. Another shook her crest in disbelief. Against whom? The humans have no claim there. They were exiled. A third spoke more quietly, reading from a data slate. They did not claim it. They stabilized it. Their ships rerouted traffic safely for 12 hours before sealing access. The chamber fell still. High Counselor Verex stared at the projection. Sealed access to whom? To everyone except vessels cleared through human-controlled corridors, the analyst replied. A low murmur spread. That was not how war began. That was how control was established. Verex straightened. Send a diplomatic envoy. Clarify intentions. The envoy never arrived. Its escort fleet emerged from hyperspace on schedule, only to find the junction surrounded, not blockaded by warships, but encircled by infrastructure. Sensor towers, traffic regulators, defense platforms set deep into surrounding debris fields. The entire region had been reshaped. A human control signal answered the envoy's hail immediately. Council vessels are requested to hold position, the comm voice said. This junction is undergoing safety reclassification. The council captain bristled. By whose authority? There was a pause. By necessity, the human replied. The signal ended. No shots were fired. No threats issued. The envoy withdrew, unsettled, escorted out of the zone by human drones that kept a respectful distance while making it very clear where the boundaries lay. The report shook the core. Humanity had not seized the junction by force. They had rendered council authority irrelevant without violence. That scared the council more than open rebellion ever could. Intelligence divisions went into overdrive. What they uncovered was worse than expected. Human activity in the Outer Rim was not random expansion. It was layered. Every settlement, every shipyard, every alliance fed into a growing web of logistics and influence. Humans were not just surviving the Rim. They were integrating it. Worse, they were doing it quietly. A classified briefing revealed that dozens of minor species had entered into mutual protection compacts with humanity. Not vassal treaties. Not conquest. Shared defense and trade guarantees. Species the Council had ignored for centuries were now flying human escort tags. A junior counselor finally voiced the thought others avoided. They are building legitimacy. Verex did not deny it. Humans were denied status, he said slowly. Now they are creating their own. As tension rose in the core, something else began to change beyond it. Rim warlords started dying. Not dramatically, not in open battle. One by one, their power collapsed. Supply lines failed. Lieutenants defected. Strongholds lost energy or access to routes they depended on. Human ships were sometimes seen nearby. They were never blamed. One such warlord, ancient and cunning, realized too late what was happening. His spies reported that his merchant partners were trading through human corridors. His weapons dealers demanded higher prices. His crews whispered about joining the quiet zones. When he finally sent a fleet toward a human station in desperation, the response was swift. Human vessels appeared only long enough to disable engines and communications. They boarded, disarmed, and left the crews alive. The warlord's flagship was not destroyed. It was stripped. Days later, his own lieutenants overthrew him. Across the Rim, the message spread without humans ever broadcasting it. Power here had changed hands. Back in council space, fear began to override arrogance. A hardline faction pushed for decisive action. Strike now, they argued, before they grow stronger. Verex authorized reconnaissance instead. Stealth probes slipped into the Outer Rim, guided by old maps and assumptions. Many never returned. Those that did brought back images the Council struggled to believe. Shipyards bigger than anything humanity had once fielded. Not centralized, but distributed. If one fell, 10 more could replace it. Fleets organized around flexibility, not hierarchy. Crews trained to fight alone if needed. And then there were the people. Human populations had not fractured under exile. They had unified. Old political identities were gone. What replaced them was something leaner. Purpose-driven. Focused on survival and autonomy. A sociological analyst summarized it in one sentence. They no longer defined themselves by what the Council denied them. That frightened the Council deeply, because denial had always been their strongest weapon. Then came the incident that changed everything. A Council peacekeeping fleet entered Rim-adjacent space without authorization, claiming navigation error. Human patrols responded immediately, but they did not engage. They were escorted. The fleet was guided safely out, except for one ship that broke formation and attempted to access restricted coordinates. Human response was instant. The rogue vessel lost power mid-jump and re-emerged drifting, systems locked. Human ships surrounded it, but did not fire. They transmitted a single message, recorded by multiple observers. "This corridor is not yours," the voice said. "Turn back." The Council fleet withdrew in silence. But the damage was done. Footage spread. Not officially. Not through Council channels. Through traitors. Through mercenary nets. Through Rim whispers. Humanity was enforcing borders. Not as exiles. As equals, or something more. Emergency sessions followed. Accusations flew. Some blamed Verex for allowing exile in the first place. Others blamed humanity for betraying Council mercy. Verex listened, expression hard. Finally, he spoke. "We believed exile would weaken them," he said. "We believed the Rim would consume them." He paused, looking at the star map, now filled with human markers. It did not. A junior counselor swallowed. "What do we do?" Verex answered honestly. "We are no longer deciding the pace of events." As if summoned by his words, a priority transmission interrupted the chamber. Outer Rim source. Verified. The projection ignited, showing a human commander standing before a backdrop of ships and stars. His tone was calm, measured, and unmistakably confident. "Galactic Council," the commander said, "this message is not a declaration of war." The chamber leaned forward. "It is a notification." The image shifted, displaying a network of highlighted systems, hyperjunctions, trade lanes, stabilization zones. "These routes are now under human protection," the commander continued. "Transit will remain open to all who respect established safety protocols." A counselor shouted, "By what right?" The human did not hesitate. "By the right you abandoned," he replied. "When you cast us out." The transmission ended. No threats. No ultimatums. Just facts. As the chamber descended into stunned silence, Verex felt something cold settle in his core. Humanity was not asking to return. They were informing the galaxy that power had already shifted. And the Council, for the first time in its long history, faced a future it no longer controlled. Far beyond their reach, human fleets moved into new positions, surrounding a junction even more critical than the last. And this time, the galaxy would not be able to pretend it was an accident. The Council's silence did not last. Fear never allows it. Within days of the human transmission, emergency summits erupted across core space. Trade syndicates demanded protection. Military blocs accused one another of weakness. Smaller Council species quietly began moving assets, gold, data, even populations, toward routes labeled human-protected. That was the first betrayal. It did not go unnoticed. Human intelligence saw it all, not through spies in the core, but through traffic itself. Ships spoke with their engines. Routes revealed loyalties. Patterns told truths no speeches ever could. And the pattern was clear. The galaxy trusted human corridors more than Council promises. At the edge of the Outer Rim, inside a vast hollowed asteroid now serving as a command hub, human leadership gathered. There was no grand throne room, no towering statues. Just a wide chamber of steel and light, screens layered with real-time data. Admiral Renka stood at the center. She had been young when exile was declared, too junior to speak in the Council chamber, old enough to remember the silence afterward, the way humanity realized no one was coming to help. She studied the star map, now dense with human-controlled zones. "They're panicking," one officer said. "Council patrols are probing everywhere. Not attacking. Testing." Renka nodded. "They want us to overreact." Another officer spoke. "We won't." "No," Renka agreed. "We advance." Orders flowed. Not military ones. Economic ones. Human engineers adjusted traffic algorithms, shaving hours off trade routes. Medical convoys were escorted through dangerous regions free of charge. A damaged alien habitat, ignored by the Council for decades, received human repair drones without fanfare. No announcement was made. The results spoke louder. Across the Rim and beyond, a quiet realization spread. Humanity was not behaving like conquerors. They were behaving like custodians. That frightened the Council more than fleets ever could. In the core, Verex convened a closed session, restricted to senior members only. The chamber felt smaller now, its once immense authority diminished by uncertainty. They are undermining us without firing a shot, a counselor hissed. This is insurrection by infrastructure. Varix did not argue. Because we taught them how. Eyes turned to him. The council has always ruled through dependency, Varix continued. Trade access, security guarantees, stability. Humans have replicated the model, then removed the hierarchy. A counselor slammed a limb against the dais. Then we removed them. Now, the military representative finally spoke. Our projections are unfavorable. Murmurs erupted. You are saying we would lose? I am saying, the representative replied carefully, that a decisive victory is no longer possible without catastrophic loss. That admission shattered something sacred. For the first time in recorded history, the council could not enforce its will. The vote that followed was not unanimous, but it was final. A containment action was approved, not war. Isolation. Council-aligned species were ordered to cease all trade with human-controlled routes. Hyperlane access was restricted. Sanctions enacted. Information networks severed. The council believed humanity would fracture under pressure. They were wrong again. Humanity had prepared for this moment long before the first junction went dark. When sanctions hit, human markets did not collapse. They adjusted. Trade rerouted through rim allies. Resource shortages were filled by systems the council had never bothered to catalog. Energy flowed from stars the council deemed too unstable to use. More importantly, humanity spoke directly to those affected by the sanctions. Not with speeches. With access. A dozen minor species faced immediate shortages when council trade stopped. Human convoys arrived within days. Supplies were delivered without demands for allegiance, only cooperation. The council's isolation strategy backfired almost instantly. Species that followed the sanctions suffered. Species that quietly ignored them prospered. The divide deepened. Then came the incident that ended any illusion of containment. A core world, rich, influential, and fiercely loyal to the council, suffered a catastrophic infrastructure failure. A starside energy lattice collapsed, threatening planetary evacuation. Council relief fleets were delayed by bureaucratic paralysis and internal disputes. Human sensors detected the crisis within minutes. Renka received the report. Council world, an officer said. No request for aid. Renka did not hesitate. Dispatch relief. Another officer frowned. They won't accept it. They don't have to, Renka replied. They just have to survive. Human ships arrived first. They stabilized the lattice. Evacuated millions. Deployed atmospheric regulators and emergency habitats. They worked alongside local crews without taking command. When the council fleet finally arrived, the crisis was already contained. Cameras captured everything. Council ships hovering uselessly while human crews saved lives. The footage spread faster than any sanction ever could. The council tried to suppress it. It was too late. Public confidence, once absolute, began to crack. In the rim, something else changed. Human fleets began reconfiguring, not expanding, consolidating. Old ship designs were retired. New ones emerged, sleeker, heavier, built around endurance rather than speed. Fleets trained together across species lines. Humans, rim dwellers, former pirates, and forgotten clans learned to fight as one. A shared doctrine emerged. Defensive dominance. Humanity was not preparing to invade the core. They were preparing to make the invasion pointless. Varric saw it before most. In a private moment, he reviewed a classified projection, a simulated council strike against human territory. Every scenario ended the same way. Victory cost too much. Defeat cost everything. He closed the file and stared at the stars. We created this, he whispered. The final warning came not from the council, but from a place they had long ignored. An ancient neutral archive, older than the council itself, activated after centuries of silence. Its message was broadcast across all major networks. System evaluation complete, the archive announced. Galactic power balance has shifted beyond council exclusivity. The chamber erupted. Varix rose slowly. Who triggered this? A technician answered, shaken. No one. The archive responds to thresholds. It has recognized humanity as a stabilizing force equal to, or greater than, the council. The words hit like a blade. Equal, or greater. As panic spread, a final human transmission arrived. Not a broadcast, an invitation. To the Galactic Council, the message read, Observers are welcome at the Outer Rim convergence. Witness our intent. Some counselors demanded refusal. Others saw no choice. Verex closed his eyes. For centuries, the council had summoned others to kneel. Now, for the first time, it had been invited to observe. And deep within human space, fleets assembled not for war, but for revelation. Because the next phase was not about survival. It was about redefining power itself. The Outer Rim convergence did not look like a trap. That unsettled everyone. Council observers arrived in carefully spaced intervals, escorted through human-controlled corridors with flawless precision. No weapons locks tracked them. No intimidation displays flared. Human traffic control guided each vessel calmly, efficiently, as if hosting a routine summit. The convergence floated above a dim red star, surrounded by dozens of stations arranged in a wide ring. They were not war platforms. They were infrastructure, docks, habitats, trade hubs, medical centers. Ships of dozens of species moved freely between them. Council analysts watched in silence. This was not a hidden empire. It was an open one. Verex's vessel docked last. As he stepped onto the station, he expected ceremony, perhaps defiance. Instead, he was greeted by silence and motion. Crews at work, machines humming, species intermingling without visible hierarchy. Humans walked beside non-humans as equals. No banners, no slogans, no symbols of dominance. That disturbed him more than arrogance ever had. He was escorted to an observation hall overlooking the convergence. The view stole breath from even the most hardened counselors. Thousands of ships, not massed for battle, positioned in patterns of coverage, support, and redundancy. Fleets overlapped fields of protection like woven fabric. Every angle was covered, not aggressively, but completely. A human representative entered the hall. She wore no formal regalia, just a dark uniform marked with a simple insignia, a circle, unbroken. "I am Coordinator Hale," she said. "Welcome." Verex studied her. "Is this demonstration meant to impress us?" Hale met his gaze. "No, it is meant to reassure everyone else." She gestured, and the projection shifted. Trade flow maps appeared. Casualty reduction statistics. Piracy rates plummeting. Infrastructure failures were resolved faster than council response times. Species migration stabilized. Famine curves bending downward. "These are rim systems," Hale said. "Many of them were abandoned. Some of them were written off." She paused. "They are stable now." A counselor scoffed. "At what cost?" Hale did not hesitate. "Human lives. And others. Shared." The room grew quiet. Verex leaned forward. "You invited us to observe, not to negotiate." "What?" Hill's expression remained calm. "Because negotiation implies permission." That landed heavily. "We are not seeking council approval," she continued. "We are demonstrating a reality already in place." Another counselor snapped. "You are dismantling galactic order." "No," Hale replied. "We are replacing neglect with responsibility." The projection shifted again. A replay appeared. Human fleets withdrawing from core borders weeks earlier. Junctions reopened. Control handed back to neutral traffic authorities trained by humans. "We have no interest in choking the core," Hale said. "Dependence breeds resentment." "We learned that lesson well." Verex felt a slow chill. "You are saying you could have cut us off," he said, "and chose not to." "Yes." The admission carried no pride, only certainty. One of the military observers finally spoke. "Then what do you want?" Hale looked at the assembled council. "We want distance," she said, "and recognition of reality." A murmur spread. "You exiled us," she continued. "You believed removal equaled weakness. Instead, it gave us clarity." The projection changed once more. Images of early exile appeared. Human convoys under fire. Lost ships. Broken habitats. Graves drifting in vacuum. "We paid the price," Hale said quietly. "And we adapted." The images shifted again. Children growing up on rim stations. Mixed species crews training together. Markets alive with movement and color. "We are not returning to the council," Hale said. "We are moving past it." Silence stretched. Then Verex spoke. "What happens," he asked, "when our interests collide?" Hale met his gaze evenly. "Then we will defend our people." A pause. "But we will not pursue your collapse," she added. "That path ends only one way. We know. We walked it." That honesty struck harder than any threat. The convergence tour continued. Council observers saw shipyards where designs evolved mid-construction. Medical bays treating species the Council classified as non-priority. Education hubs training engineers and pilots without regard to origin. One observer whispered, "This is inefficient." A human guide overheard. "No," he corrected gently. "It is expensive. Why accept that cost?" The human answered without hesitation. "Because abandonment costs more." By the final cycle, the Council delegation was shaken. Not afraid. Unmoored. Back in Council space, the reaction was immediate and divided. Hardliners called the convergence propaganda. Weakness disguised as virtue. Others saw something far more dangerous. An alternative. Public pressure mounted. Core populations had seen the footage. They had seen Council fleets arrive late, while human ones arrived first. They had seen stability where chaos once ruled. Confidence wavered. The Council convened one last emergency session. Verex stood before a chamber no longer united. "They have not declared war," he said. "They have not threatened us." A counselor shouted. "They have humiliated us." "No," Verex replied quietly. "They have surpassed us." The vote that followed fractured the Council irrevocably. Some species chose to formally disengage from exclusive Council authority. Others clung tighter. The unified galactic order cracked down its center. Humanity made no announcement. They did not celebrate. They did not capitalize. They continued building. Weeks later, a new designation quietly appeared in ancient archives and neutral systems alike. Outer Rim Authority recognized stabilizing power. Not supreme, not dominant. Stabilizing. And across the galaxy, the consequences began to unfold. Trade reoriented. Defense doctrines shifted. Smaller species negotiated openly with humans rather than pleading with the Council. Power flowed, not upward, but outward. Verex watched it happen from his chamber, the glow of distant stars reflected in tired eyes. "We cast them out," he whispered. And now, without firing a shot, humanity had claimed something far greater than territory. They had claimed the future, and the galaxy would never return to what it had been before. The fracture did not announce itself with explosions. It spread quietly. In the weeks after the Outer Rim convergence, the galaxy entered a state no one had prepared for. There was no declaration of war, no grand collapse, just a slow, irreversible shift as systems began making choices the Council could no longer control. The first to move were not governments. They were merchants. Trade guilds recalculated risk models and found an uncomfortable truth. Human-protected routes were cheaper, safer, and faster. Insurance rates dropped. Cargo losses plummeted. Even with longer distances, profits increased. Guild leaders did not issue statements. They rerouted fleets. Council authorities noticed too late. By the time emergency tariffs were imposed, half the traffic had already shifted. Attempts to punish defectors only accelerated the flow. Every sanction created a new reason to avoid Council space. Then came the second movement. Defense. Several mid-tier species, old Council members, proud but vulnerable, quietly requested joint patrol agreements with humanity. They did not announce withdrawal from the Council. They simply hedged their survival. Humanity accepted without ceremony. Admiral Renka reviewed the requests in silence. Each carried the same undertone. Fear of being left alone if the Council failed. "They don't trust either of us," an officer observed. Renka nodded. "Good. That means they're thinking." Human patrols expanded, not outward, but sideways. They reinforced shared borders, integrated local crews, standardized emergency protocols. Every agreement strengthened the network without declaring allegiance. It was influenced without conquest. Back in the Council chamber, panic finally overcame pride. The remaining hardliners pushed for action. Not containment. Not sanctions. Demonstration. A show of strength that would remind the galaxy who still held authority. Verex opposed it. "This will not end how you expect," he warned. But his voice no longer carried weight. The decision passed narrowly. A Council task force, large, heavily armed, and publicly labeled a security exercise, was dispatched toward the rim-adjacent systems that had most openly cooperated with humanity. The message was clear. Compliance had limits. Human sensors detected the fleet almost immediately. Renka stood in the command hub, watching its trajectory unfold across the star map. "They're not coming for us," an analyst said. "They're targeting Allied space." Renka's jaw tightened. They're testing whether we'll protect others, she said. An officer asked the question no one wanted to voice. Do we? Rinka answered without hesitation. That is the only question that matters. Orders went out. Human fleets did not rush to intercept. They did not challenge the Council task force directly. Instead, they moved ahead of it, into the threatened systems. Civilian evacuations began immediately. Defensive grids activated. Human ships integrated with local fleets seamlessly, sharing targeting data and command authority. When the Council task force arrived, they found no weak targets. They found preparation. A Council admiral opened a channel, voice sharp with irritation. This is Council-controlled space. Withdraw immediately. The human commander replied calmly. This system has requested protection. We are providing it. You have no authority here. The human paused, then answered evenly. Neither do you. The standoff lasted hours. Sensors locked. Weapons primed. The galaxy watched. This time, there would be no deniability. The first shot did not come from humanity. A Council cruiser launched a warning volley, wide, unfocused, meant to intimidate. Human ships did not return fire. They absorbed the impact, shields flaring. Then the system itself responded. Defense platforms, built jointly by humans and local engineers, activated. Not weapons. Countermeasures. Gravitational dampeners disrupted firing solutions. Electronic warfare blinded targeting arrays. The Council fleet suddenly found itself unable to aim. Human vessels moved with precision, positioning themselves between the task force and the populated world below. They fired only when necessary, disabling engines, crippling communications, forcing disengagement. The engagement lasted less than 12 minutes. No ships were destroyed. The Council fleet withdrew in confusion and humiliation. Footage flooded the galaxy. Council forces firing first. Humanity defending others. The narrative snapped into place. In the Council chamber, the fallout was immediate and brutal. Species that had supported the demonstration distanced themselves publicly. Others demanded accountability. The word protector began circulating in reference to humanity, not officially, but everywhere that mattered. Varix watched the chaos unfold, heart heavy. We have crossed a line, he said quietly. No one listened. Then came the defection. One of the Council's oldest member species, founders of its original charter, announced a restructuring of their foreign policy. They would remain on the Council, they said, but they would also enter a permanent defensive partnership with the Outer Rim Authority. The chamber erupted. You cannot serve two powers, a counselor shouted. The species delegate responded calmly. We are serving survival. That broke something fundamental. Within days, others followed. Some openly, some quietly. The Council's unity, its greatest weapon, crumbled. Humanity did not exploit the moment. They stabilized it. Rinka issued a directive. No expansion beyond agreed zones. No pursuit of withdrawing Council forces. No retaliatory measures. We are not here to replace one monopoly with another, she told her commanders. We are here to end monopolies. The restraint confused everyone, especially the Council. Varix requested a private channel. To Rinka. She accepted. You could finish this, Varix said. The galaxy would follow you. Rinka's expression was steady. And repeat your mistake? Varix flinched. You ruled because no one else could, she continued. We lead because others choose to stand with us. There was no accusation in her tone, only observation. What happens to the Council? Varix asked. Rinka considered. That depends on whether it can accept a world where it is no longer the center. The channel closed. Weeks passed. The galaxy did not burn. It was reorganized. Trade flowed through multiple hubs now. Defense networks overlapped. No single authority could abandon entire regions without consequences. The Council still existed, but it was no longer absolute. And humanity, once exiled, once dismissed, had become something far more dangerous than conquerors. They had become necessary. In the quiet depths of the Outer Rim, new shipyards powered up, not to build fleets for war, but to ensure that no one would ever again be cast out and forgotten. Because humanity had learned the hardest lesson of all. Power was not about domination. It was about who the galaxy turned to when everything else failed. And now, when systems go dark, when fleets were too late, when the Council argued instead of acted, they turned to the Outer Rim. They turned to humans. And the final balance of the galaxy began to tip, not with violence, but with choice. The galaxy did not tip all at once. It creaked. Systems adjusted orbit by orbit, decision by decision, as if reality itself were reluctant to admit what had changed. The Council still issued statements. Fleets still bore its insignia. Laws were still written in its chambers. But when crises came, eyes no longer turned inward. They turned outward, toward the rim. The first true test came without warning. A stellar cascade ignited in the Carthan expanse, a volatile region bordering both Council and human-influenced space. A chain of stars destabilized in rapid sequence, triggering gravity surges and radiation waves that threatened dozens of inhabited systems. Council response protocols activated immediately, and immediately failed. Jurisdiction disputes delayed action. Defense fleets argued over authority. Evacuation orders contradicted one another. Hours passed, then days. Human sensors detected the cascade before the Council finished debating. Admiral Renka stood before a projection of collapsing star lines, her expression unreadable. "How many systems?" she asked. 32 at risk, an analyst replied. 10 critical. Council response, fragmented. Renka inhaled slowly. "Dispatch stabilization fleets. All available." An officer hesitated. "Those are mixed zones. Council-controlled populations." Renka's eyes hardened. Lives do not belong to jurisdictions. Human fleets launched within minutes. They did not wait for permission. They did not announce intervention. They acted. Gravitational anchors were deployed to bleed off stellar pressure. Evacuation corridors were carved through chaos with precision navigation. Human ships took the brunt of radiation exposure, rotating crews and hulls to keep civilian transports moving. Species that had never spoken to humans before found themselves guided by calm, steady voices through impossible odds. "Follow the light markers," a human pilot instructed. "Do not accelerate. We will hold the corridor." Some ships did not make it. Human ones stayed behind when they should have withdrawn. Losses mounted, but the cascade was contained. When the last system stabilized, billions were alive who should have died. The Council arrived to find the crisis already over. And the galaxy noticed. Footage spread, not of heroics, but of competence. Of humans coordinating dozens of species under pressure without confusion or hierarchy. Of decisions made fast, not argued slow. Public confidence shifted again. This time, visibly. In council chambers across the core, delegates faced unrest. Questions they could not answer. Why were humans first? Why were they prepared? Why were council fleets always late? Verex watched it unfold with a heavy sense of inevitability. "They are becoming the standard," he said quietly to an aide. The aide hesitated. "Is that bad?" Verex did not answer. Then came the whisper that changed the conversation entirely. An ancient defense network, older than the Council, older than most known civilizations, reawakened. The Sentinel Array. It had been built in an age of extinction, designed to monitor existential threats. For millennia, it had remained dormant, its criteria unmet. Until now, the array issued a single, system-wide classification update. Primary Stabilization Authority, Outer Rim Coalition, human-led. The message did not accuse. It did not praise. It is simply recognized. Panic followed. Council hardliners called it a malfunction. Scientists verified the data. The array had not been triggered by military strength, but by response efficiency, adaptability, and cross-species survival outcomes. Humanity had not just surpassed the Council. They had fulfilled a role the Council no longer could. Emergency sessions turned into shouting matches. Some demanded the array be dismantled. Others argued that defying it would fracture the galaxy entirely. Verex stood again before the chamber, older than he had been weeks before. "We must accept what is," he said, "or be remembered as what failed." A counselor screamed, "You would surrender our legacy." Verex's voice was calm. "Our legacy surrendered itself when we chose convenience over responsibility." The vote that followed was historic. The Council would not disband, but it would step back. A restructuring was announced, shared authority frameworks, cooperative oversight, reduced exclusivity. Words carefully chosen to mask a truth no one could deny. The Council was no longer supreme. Across human space, the reaction was muted. There were no celebrations. Renka read the announcement, then looked up at her staff. "Nothing changes," she said. "We continue." An officer frowned. "They're yielding ground. They're acknowledging reality," Renka replied. That's different. Even so, tension remained. Not everyone accepted the shift. Beyond the rim, in the deep void where neither council nor humanity had ever ruled, something stirred. A coalition of old powers, species that had once dominated before the council rose, began to move. They had watched the transformation with interest and fear. Humanity's rise threatened them all. If humans could replace the council without conquest, then no ancient power was safe. They began to arm. Quietly, human intelligence picked up the signs. Fleet mobilizations disguised as drills. Resource stockpiles hidden in dead systems. Alliances forged in secrecy. Renka studied the data late into the cycle. They're afraid, an analyst said. Renka nodded. So were we. What do we do? Renka looked at the star map, now layered with routes, lives, and responsibilities. We prepare, she said. But we do not provoke. Because she understood something the galaxy was only beginning to grasp. Humanity's greatest strength was not fleets. It was restraint. But restraint had limits. Far beyond the rim, unknown shipyards powered up. Old weapons were pulled from forgotten vaults. Plans written in ancient blood were dusted off. The galaxy was stabilizing. But stability always attracted those who wished to shatter it. And as humanity stood at the center of this new balance, not as rulers, but as anchors, one final question loomed, unanswered and heavy. When the next great threat came, would the galaxy stand with humanity? Or would it test, one last time, what happened when humans were pushed too far? In the dark beyond mapped space, engines ignited, and the future began to move. The engines igniting beyond mapped space were not human. That was the first warning. Long-range sensors detected mass movements where there should have been none, cold systems, dead stars, regions stripped so thoroughly by ancient wars that even scavengers avoided them. Energy signatures bloomed briefly, then vanished, masked by technology far older than anything the Council possessed. Human analysts did not panic. They cross-checked. What they found chilled even veterans of the Rim. These patterns, one analyst said slowly, match extinction-era records. Admiral Renka closed her eyes for a moment. Then she nodded. So they've decided, she said. They won't test us politically. An officer swallowed. They'll test us existentially. The ancient coalition revealed itself not with speeches, but with annihilation. A frontier system vanished. Not conquered. Not occupied. Erased. An inhabited world, recently stabilized by human engineers, went dark in less than 10 minutes. No debris field. No radiation blooms. Just absence. Space folded inward, leaving a gravitational scar where a planet had been. The galaxy froze. Council emergency channels erupted into chaos. Defense fleets mobilized blindly. Borders sealed. Panic spread faster than any fleet could move. Then came the message. It was not addressed to the Council. It was addressed to humanity. We remember you. The transmission said, voice layered and inhuman. You rise too quickly. You unify what should fracture. This balance is unacceptable. Renka listened in silence. When the message ended, she turned to her command staff. They fear what we represent, she said. Not what we own. The ancient coalition moved next against a Rim Alliance hub, a multi-species station protected by human fleets. This time, humanity was ready. Human ships did not rush forward. They spread out. Defense grids activated across multiple systems simultaneously, not concentrating power, but distributing it. Evacuation corridors opened before the first enemy weapons fired. Civilian ships vanished into safe routes mapped years earlier. When the ancient fleet emerged, it found no easy targets. Only prepared space. The first exchange was brutal. Ancient weapons tore through shields as if they were suggestions. Entire human squadrons were lost buying time. But every loss fed data back into the network. Human fleets adapted in real time, altering formations, rerouting power, sacrificing ships to learn the enemy's limits. The galaxy watched in horror. Then in awe. Humanity did not win quickly. They endured. Across the galaxy, something unprecedented happened. Council fleets, once hesitant, divided, moved to reinforce human lines. Not because they were ordered, because they chose to. Rim species followed. Former rivals. Old enemies. Ships bearing dozens of flags jumped into shared defense zones, integrating into human command frameworks without argument. No speeches were made. No command was claimed. Human tactical doctrine absorbed them all. Renka addressed the combined fleet, her voice broadcast across species and languages. "This is not a war for territory," she said. "This is a war for continuity. If we fall, there will be no one left to argue over borders." The ancient coalition underestimated one thing: humanity's memory. Humans had studied extinction records not as history, but as warning. Their ships carried weapons designed not to dominate space, but to disrupt reality-anchored technologies. Their engineers had planned for enemies that could not be intimidated, bargained with, or reasoned with. The counterstrike was surgical. Human fleets targeted not ships, but the structures holding the ancient coalition together. Energy nodes, coordination nexuses, the quiet points where control flowed. The ancient fleets began to fracture. For the first time, their formations hesitated. Humanity pressed, not with rage, but with precision. The decisive moment came when the coalition attempted to collapse another system. This time, human ships were already there. A line of vessels, human and allied, formed a barrier around the threatened world. Shields layered. Power rerouted. Crews stayed at stations knowing they would not survive direct impact. Renka watched the readings spike. "Hold," she said quietly. The ancient weapon fired. Space screamed and held. The barrier collapsed seconds later, but the system remained. The weapon failed. For the first time in eons, the ancient coalition faced resistance that worked. They withdrew, not in defeat, but in calculation. The galaxy exhaled. Losses were staggering. Human fleets bore the worst of it. Entire ship classes were gone. Thousands of lives lost. But civilization still existed. In the aftermath, silence returned, heavy, reverent. The council reconvened one final time. Not to rule, to acknowledge. Varric stood, his voice steady despite everything. "We cast humanity out," he said. Believing exile was mercy. He looked at the gathered delegates. "Instead, we forged our shield." No one argued. Across the galaxy, records were updated. Charters rewritten. Power redistributed, not upward, but outward, layered, shared. Humanity declined every offer of supremacy. They accepted responsibility. Outer Rim authority became something no empire had ever been. A constant. When systems failed, humans arrived. When threats emerged, humans coordinated. When power tempted, humans restrained. They were no longer underestimated. They were no longer forgotten. They were relied upon. Years later, children across dozens of species learned a simple historical truth. Humanity had been cast out once, and the galaxy never made that mistake again. Because when the universe tried to end everything, it was humans who stood in the way, not as rulers, not as conquerors, but as the ones who refused to let anyone else be abandoned. And in the endless dark between stars, that choice reshaped the future forever.